grievously marked, so messed up, that we find it hard to understand how it can derive from a good God. Will your father make you suffer like this? Just to say, I want to test you. That's the argument they always give. Alright? And so we, the homocentric religion, say, no. Leave God out of this equation. We are in this mess, what do we do about it? It's okay, our starting point. Alright? Now, this needs explanation. See, the Buddha, again the difference between the Taoist, the homocentric religion and the theocentric religion is that our starting point is what you can see. So the Buddha, when he gave his first sermon, now we are coming to Vesak. Oh, by the way, this Vesak is a very, very important Vesak, please, everybody must remember. It is 2,600 years after the Buddha was enlightened. Therefore, it is also 2,600 years after the Buddha began to teach for the first time. So this is a very important year for us. We call it Buddha Jayanti. Okay? Anyway, when the Buddha began to teach for the first time, he had 5 ascetics sitting in front of him. And these 5 ascetics were believers in a soul. And they were also believers in a God. Alright? And they were sitting in front of the Buddha. And the Buddha had to convince them of what he had discovered. And notice the way in which he says it. He taught, the first thing the Buddha taught was the Four Noble Truths. Actually, second thing. The very first thing he taught was, don't believe that rituals can save you. All these rituals must lead to purifying the mind. Don't just pray here and then walk out and kill and steal. No use. You pray here and train your mind not to kill and steal. Anyway, so he says something which is homocentric. There is suffering. If you want to start understanding the world, you have to understand there is suffering. Suffering, evil. What you don't want, that is evil. Suffering you don't want. Then the Buddha says, no faith. If I am asked to believe in God, I cannot see God. If I am asked to believe God loves me, I got no proof. But because I'm frightened, I say, yeah. That we call faith. The Buddha said, no. Don't have any place for faith. You must think for yourself. Why? You are manusya. What is manusya? Mano usha. Mano, mind. You have a mind. You must develop that mind. If you don't develop that mind, you are an animal. If you just sit, put your hands together and all the time do this, like that, and then don't know why, don't know what, any monkey can be trained to do all this. You know that. But you are a manusya, you have to think, the Buddha says. And what have you got to think about? You have to first of all look like a scientist. What do you see? There is suffering. So in case they don't understand that, the Buddha explains what constitutes evil. Old age, disease, death. You don't want old age, it happens. You don't want disease, it happens. You don't want death, it happens. All evil. Then the Buddha goes further. He says, what you want, you do not get. Think about that. All through life, we want. Do we get everything? Even if we get it, as soon as we get it, we don't want it. Think about your iPod, think about what happened to our old TV sets, what happened to all. Every time new model comes, the old model is not good enough. You see, impermanence. So that is suffering. Okay? Look at me. I want hair on my head. What do I get? Hair coming out through my ears. What I want, I do not get. What I do not want chases after me. Anybody wants to argue with that? Cannot. The 5 ascetics who were sitting there, the Buddha said, hey, look, this is your condition. Don't worry about God. Even if he caused it, go and find out why he caused it. But he doesn't seem to be around. We have this problem. Remember Confucius. Why do you worry about heaven? Worry about earth. Yeah? Because this is where it is happening. So worry about what we can do about it. There is suffering. Then he says, what is the cause? Why do you suffer? You don't suffer because of God. You suffer because you want. Simple as that. If you didn't want something, if it is not given to you, you don't care. Anybody here wants an F in an exam? So, if you don't want it. And if you get it, you don't want it. But it's because you want an A and then you get an F, that's when you suffer. You see? And that's why we call it the Dharma. Go back to Confucius again. But this time the Buddha calls this the Dharma. Dharma is not something you need to believe. Dharma comes from the word the. How is this universe operated? That's Taoism. How does this universe operate? It operates on its own law. The law is there is tsunami, there is earthquake, there is old age, there is disease, there is death, there is corruption. This is here. How do you live with it? So you see, our attitude to evil changes when we understand how the universe operates. Right? I think you all have got this email about how beautifully the Japanese conducted themselves. This was the one that gave the Christians and other one up. Because we were implying it's Buddhism, Confucianism and Taoism which gave the Japanese that dignity. You know, when the tsunami struck, there was no food. They went to the supermarkets and they lined up and they took only enough for themselves. 1 loaf of bread. Nobody had to tell them. They went, they took that 1 loaf and then, because they knew others at the back wanted. Can you try this in Malaysia and see what you see? Look at what's happening in the Middle East. They're shouting and jumping and killing. Then there were no lights. Because the lights had gone on, no electricity, they couldn't operate the counter. They couldn't operate the calculating machine. You know what the Japanese did? They went home. They didn't take anything. Why? Because if they took it, they cannot pay. Where did they get this from? If they said God is punishing us, then try and cheat and get what you can out of it. You see how it's operating in the rest of the world. You saw what happened in Haiti when there was that earthquake, how they went and raided everything. But not the Japanese. Where did they get it from? This is the way the universe operates. No God is there to help us. We have to look after ourselves. We have to look after. I want to, this year, they didn't celebrate the Sakura festival. They said, when our fellow beings are suffering, how can you imagine that happening here? Can you imagine anywhere else in the world? See, the Japanese have got that unbelievable. Where does it come from? Evil is caused by attachment. It's when you are greedy or you want something that's when you decide.